On a cold desert morning in March 2024, the Drug Enforcement Administration was closing in. Years of surveillance, informant tips, painstaking analysis were about to pay off. A Peterbilt truck, rumbling through the Arizona darkness, was their target. Inside, hidden among legitimate shipments of tobacco, was an estimated $34 million in cash. This was the lifeblood of a powerful Mexican cartel, and the DEA was ready to sever the artery. Their plan was precise. The intercept was scheduled for 4:30 a.m. at mile marker 23 on Interstate 8. Multiple federal agencies were converging, helicopters were on standby, the trap was set. It was meant to be a landmark seizure, a major victory in the endless war on drugs. But when the federal task force arrived, they found nothing. The highway was empty. The silence was deafening. Panic set in. Calls were made. Databases were checked. That is when they found the first hint of the impossible. According to a digital log in the Customs and Border Protection System, the truck had already been processed. A timestamp showed an official seizure had taken place at 4:14 a.m., a mere 16 minutes before the DEA's planned intercept. The entry was logged by a local authority, the Yuma County Sheriff's Office. The officer's name was Deputy Logan Reed. For the seasoned federal agents on the scene, this was more than just a jurisdictional mix-up. It was the beginning of a mystery that would unravel one of the most audacious heists in American history. The DEA scrambled to contact the Yuma County Sheriff's Office. The dispatcher on duty was confused. There were no records of any traffic stops or seizures on that stretch of highway. No deputies had been assigned to that specific area. The duty sergeant confirmed it. Yet, the official database told a different story. It showed a legitimate county seizure complete with proper authorization codes. The truck, its driver, and the $34 million had simply vanished into thin air. The GPS tracker on the vehicle had gone dark just after 4:14 a.m., its last known location a remote turnoff miles from the planned federal intercept point. The law had seemingly beaten the law to the punch, but no one knew who was holding the prize. This was not a simple case of one agency stepping on another's toes. This was a surgical strike executed with military precision and an insider's knowledge of law enforcement procedure. The perpetrator had not only stolen a fortune from a violent criminal organization but had done so by using the very systems designed to uphold the law against them. They had outmaneuvered the DEA, exploited the gaps between federal and local jurisdictions, and vanished before the dust even had a chance to settle. The name on the digital record, Deputy Logan Reed, was not just a clue. He was the ghost at the center of a perfect crime, a man who had used his badge as a key to unlock a treasure chest and then disappeared into the shadows. Logan Reed was the last person anyone would suspect. At 39 years old, he was a 15-year veteran of law enforcement, a man whose career was defined by quiet competence and unwavering professionalism. His journey began in the military, where he served as a military police officer, specializing in logistics and supply chain management. He understood how things moved: supplies on a battlefield, evidence in a criminal case. This expertise followed him when he joined the Yuma County Sheriff's Office in 2015. He was the guy you went to for complex cases involving evidence handling and chain of custody. His paperwork was always immaculate, his procedures by the book. His colleagues saw him as reliable, if a bit of a loner. Behind the crisp uniform and the sterling performance reviews, however, a different kind of ambition was taking root. Reed was a student of systems, and he saw flaws everywhere. He was particularly fascinated by the friction between local and federal law enforcement agencies. DEA, FBI, CBP, he had watched for years as they operated in his county, often with an air of superiority, sharing little information and treating local deputies as little more than glorified security guards. This wasn't just professional pride, it was a tactical observation. The lack of communication and trust between agencies created blind spots. It created gaps. And in those gaps, opportunities could be found. A pivotal moment came in 2019. Reed had developed credible intelligence on a significant local drug trafficking ring. He followed protocol and passed the information up the chain, expecting to be part of a joint task force. Instead, he was told to stand down. The case was now a federal matter outside his jurisdiction. Months later, federal agents conducted a series of raids and made headlines with their major bust. Reed, who had provided the initial break, received no credit, no acknowledgement. The experience left him with a deep-seated resentment. He saw the system not as a unified force for justice, but as a collection of competing factions. each guarding its own territory. This realization changed everything. Reed began to apply his logistical mind to a new problem: how to exploit the system for his own gain. He started small, studying the operations of the cartels that used his county as a corridor. He wasn't looking to make arrests, he was looking to learn their methods. He learned their routes, their concealment techniques, and their security protocols. He realized the cartels were, in their own way, just another complex logistical organization. They moved a product, managed a supply chain, and relied on predictable patterns. He started to see a path, a way to use his knowledge as a lawman to commit the perfect crime, one that would target not innocent civilians, but the very criminals he was supposed to be chasing. The planning for the $34 million heist began in early 2023, when Reed first learned about the cartel's tobacco front operations. He realized that this represented an opportunity unlike anything he had previously encountered. The money was moving through his jurisdiction, but federal agencies were planning to intercept it. If Reed could get to the truck first, he could potentially seize the entire shipment before federal authorities even knew it was missing. Reed spent months preparing for this operation. He studied the cartel's route, identified the optimal intercept point, and developed detailed procedures for processing the truck. He purchased equipment, arranged for support services, and created multiple layers of deception to hide his activities from other law enforcement agencies. The most challenging aspect of Reed's planning was timing. He needed to intercept the truck after it had been detected by federal agencies, but before they could act on their intelligence. This required him to have access to federal communications and planning documents, which he obtained through his legitimate law enforcement connections. Reed's position as a deputy sheriff gave him access to various interagency communication systems. He could monitor federal operations without raising suspicions, and he could time his own activities to avoid detection. The key was to act decisively when the opportunity presented itself, and to have all the supporting infrastructure in place before the operation began. The phone call that changed everything came on a Tuesday morning in late February 2024. Logan Reed was sitting in his patrol car monitoring traffic on Interstate 8 when his personal satellite phone buzzed with an incoming call. The caller's voice was distorted by electronic modulation, but the accent was clearly Mexican. What made the call remarkable wasn't just the information it contained, but the level of detail that suggested the caller had access to highly classified cartel operations. The caller provided the truck's license plate number, the driver's name, and even details about the hidden compartments where the money was stored.
The federal agencies plan to stop this truck at mile marker 23. They will be in position at 4:30 a.m. on March 18th. If you were to intercept the truck at mile marker 17 at 4:14 a.m., you would have a 16-minute head start.
Reed was stunned by the specificity of the information. The caller knew details about federal operations that should have been classified at the highest levels. This suggested that the cartel had sources within federal law enforcement agencies, or that they had sophisticated surveillance capabilities. But the most shocking revelation came at the end of the call. The caller explained that this was not a random tip, but part of a larger operation. The cartel was planning to sacrifice this shipment as part of a strategy to identify and eliminate law enforcement officers who could be compromised. Reed realized he was being offered a choice between two equally dangerous options, but he believed he could outsmart both the cartel and federal law enforcement. He would steal the money not just from the cartel, but from everyone involved in the operation. Logan Reed had been waiting in the darkness for over 3 hours when the Peterbilt truck's headlights finally appeared on the horizon. At 4:14 a.m., he activated his emergency lights and pulled the truck over. The location was perfect for Reed's purposes. Mile marker 17 sat in what law enforcement called a dead zone, an area where cellular coverage was poor and radio communication with dispatch was often unreliable. Reed approached the driver's side of the truck with practiced professionalism. Carlos Mendez, the driver, was nervous but cooperative. He handed over his commercial driver's license, vehicle registration, and shipping manifest without hesitation.
Sir, I'm showing a weight discrepancy in our database. State Transportation Authority flagged your truck for a safety inspection. I'm going to need you to follow me to our certified weighing facility.
This was the first lie, but it was delivered with such authority that Mendez never questioned it. Reed had spent months studying the language and procedures used by various law enforcement agencies. He knew exactly how to sound official, while providing information that couldn't be easily verified in the moment. Reed directed Mendez to follow his patrol vehicle to what he described as Secure Lab Logistics, a facility he claimed was contracted by the county for specialized vehicle inspections. The route took them off the main highway onto a series of back roads that led toward the small town of Tacna. Mendez followed, believing he was cooperating with a routine inspection. The facility itself was located in a small industrial park that had seen better days. Several warehouses sat empty, their parking lots cracked and overgrown with desert vegetation. Secure Lab Logistics occupied a corner building that looked legitimate enough from the outside, proper signage, security cameras, and a chain-link fence surrounding the property. Reed used a keycard to open the main gate and directed Mendez to park the truck in a designated bay. The interior of the facility was sparse but professional-looking: metal tables, computer terminals, and various pieces of equipment that could plausibly be used for vehicle inspection. Most importantly, there were no other employees present, which Reed explained was normal for overnight operations.
Standard procedure. We'll need to conduct a full inspection of your cargo. This facility is certified by both state and federal authorities for handling commercial shipments. You'll need to sign an impound release, and we'll have you back on the road within 24 hours.
The impound release was a masterpiece of bureaucratic deception. Reed had spent considerable time creating a form that looked official but wasn't connected to any legitimate government database. Mendez signed without reading the fine print, which included clauses giving authorized personnel broad access to the vehicle and its contents. Reed then called for what he described as a transport service to take Mendez to a nearby motel. Once Mendez was gone, Reed began the most critical phase of his operation. He had exactly 36 hours to strip the truck of its hidden cargo, replace it with substitute materials, and return everything to its original appearance. This window had been carefully calculated based on the typical duration of legitimate inspections, and the time it would take for federal agencies to realize something was wrong. The truck's GPS tracking device had been disabled using a commercial signal jammer, a device that Reed had purchased months earlier under the guise of testing security protocols for the sheriff's office. The jammer was powerful enough to block all satellite communication within a quarter-mile radius, effectively making the truck invisible to any tracking systems. Reed had prepared for this moment for over a year. He had studied the cartel's operations, learned their methods for concealing cash, and developed detailed plans for accessing and removing their hidden compartments. The tobacco cargo was legitimate, but hidden within specially modified shipping containers were vacuum-sealed packages containing millions of dollars in various denominations. Working alone, Reed spent the next 18 hours methodically removing the cash and replacing it with carefully prepared substitutes. Lead bricks were wrapped in plastic to match the weight of currency bundles. Compressed cardboard was shaped and packaged to fill the exact dimensions of the hidden compartments. Even the shipping container seals were replaced with identical copies that Reed had obtained through a contact in the trucking industry. The precision of the operation was remarkable. Reed had to account for every ounce of weight, every dimension, and every security feature. The cartel's money was protected by multiple layers of concealment, but Reed had studied their methods extensively. He knew where to look and how to access the hidden compartments without leaving obvious traces. By the time Reed finished, the truck appeared exactly as it had when it arrived. The cargo manifest matched the contents. The seals looked untouched, and the weight distribution was perfectly balanced. Only the most sophisticated inspection would reveal that the truck was now carrying approximately $34 million less than when it had entered the facility. The money itself was packed into military-grade storage containers and loaded into an unmarked utility trailer that Reed had parked behind the facility. Reed's final task was to prepare the truck for its return to the highway. After 36 hours, he drove the refilled truck to a rest stop and called Carlos Mendez, the driver. He presented him with a thick folder of documents, a completed inspection report detailing minor, now repaired violations, an invoice from Secure Lab Logistics marked as paid by the county, and a certificate of roadworthiness. The paperwork was immaculate, overwhelming, and utterly convincing. Mendez, relieved to have his truck back and his journey only slightly delayed, drove off without a second thought. 3 days later, the truck reappeared at the Nogales border crossing. Driver Carlos Mendez acted like nothing had happened. CBP agents, alerted by the DEA, ran a full inspection. Seals intact, weight correct, manifest matched the cargo. On the surface, everything was perfect. Detailed scans told another story. The dense bundles were not cash, they were lead, they were cardboard. The official probe became a bureaucratic quagmire. The DEA blamed the Yuma County Sheriff's Office. The Sheriff's Office pointed to official-looking paperwork filed by a trusted deputy. Investigators found Secure Lab Logistics warehouse empty. Equipment gone, computers wiped clean, the owning entity traced to shell companies, a dead end, a crime scene with no criminal. All eyes turned to Logan Reed. By the time a warrant issued, he was gone. His home was cleared of personal effects, his bank accounts untouched, his service weapon and badge left on the kitchen table. He had not used his credit cards. He had not used his phone. He had not used his real name. He had simply ceased to exist. His colleagues were stunned. They called him a model officer, quiet, dedicated. No one believed he could pull off such a heist. The man they knew was a fabrication. The cartel's response was quieter and more chilling. No bloody retaliation. A silent investigation instead. They knew they'd been played, not by a rival gang, not by a federal agency, by a lone wolf who knew their systems. $34 million lost. Worse, their reputation damaged. A county deputy made them look like fools. This was no longer about money, it was about honor. And word went out across the underworld. Find Logan Reed. Today, the case of Logan Reed remains one of the great unsolved mysteries in modern American crime. He is a ghost. A legend whispered in law enforcement circles and criminal underworlds. The official investigation remains open, but the trail has gone cold. With each passing year, the likelihood of his capture diminishes. Did he flee to a country with no extradition treaty? Is he living a quiet life in some anonymous American suburb under a name no one knows? Or did the cartel's long reach finally find him? No one knows for sure. He simply vanished, leaving behind a legacy of questions. The heist exposed deep fissures in the American law enforcement system. It highlighted a dangerous lack of communication and trust between federal and local agencies. Those bureaucratic gaps could be exploited by someone with knowledge and audacity. Reed's crime forced a painful self-examination in agencies like the DEA and the FBI. They prompted changes in how they coordinate with local partners. But how many other Logan Reeds are out there? How many other disillusioned officers have the skills and the motive to turn the system against itself? His story is a chilling reminder that the greatest threat can come from within. For the true crime community, Logan Reed has become a folk hero, a modern-day D.B. Cooper. He took on a drug cartel, he took on a bloated federal bureaucracy. He didn't hurt anyone. He stole from criminals. He outsmarted the government. In an age of cynicism about institutions, his story resonates with a public that loves to see the system beaten at its own game. He is the mastermind who pulled off the perfect crime and got away with it. A testament to the power of meticulous planning and a deep understanding of human fallibility. And so, the legend of the vanished lawman grows. The $34 million has never been recovered. Logan Reed has never been found. He exists now only as a cautionary tale, a ghost in the machine he so expertly dismantled. Somewhere out there he may be reading this, perhaps with a slight smile, knowing he committed a crime so perfect that it became a story. The final question is not whether he will ever be caught, but whether he wanted to be remembered. If so, he succeeded beyond his wildest dreams. He is the man who knew the rules better than anyone, and used them to break every single one. Logan Reed, the deputy who became a ghost, the lawman who broke the law, and the man who pulled off the perfect crime and simply walked away into legend.